Good morning, good morning.
Ai presenti, alle persone presenti,
Good
alle
morning,
tante persone che
everybody,
sono
both
collegate
of
in
the
streaming con noi in questo
many people
momento per
present
la
here
quinta
and
edizione di
the
questo forum
many
della
connected online
sostenibilità
here. Welcome to this
organizzato dalla
Sustainability
Fondazione di San
Economy
Patrignano
Forum
Industria e Sole
organized by
24
San
Ore siamo media
Patrignano
partner
Confindustria. Sole
e siamo
24 Ore is
arrivati
a
alla
media
quinta
partner.
edizione
It's now the
di questo
fifth edition
appuntamento. Io
of this
ricordo
event.
nel 2018
And in
siamo partiti
2018,
citando un numero
we started off
e il
mentioning
numero
some
era
figures, especially one figure.
410.
The figure was 410.
Oggi,
Today,
a qualche anno di distanza, ma non troppi,
some years
questo numero,
later,
che
but
era
not that many
410,
years,
è
that
diventato
figure that was 410 has
422.
become
E questo
422.
è uno di quei casi in
This is
cui
one of those
più
cases
non
when
equivale a meglio,
the more is
perché
not the
queste sono le
merrier,
parti per milione
because
di
these
CO2
are the parts per million
misurate
of
dall'osservatorio
CO2
di Mauna
measured
Loa delle
by
Hawaii,
the
che rappresenta per noi
Hawaii
la più lunga serie storica
Observatory,
disponibile di
which
questo
represents
indicatore,
the
formata dalla
longest
fine degli anni 50,
historical
iniziato a
series
misurare la
available for this
CO2
indicator. Since the
e
1950s, when
sistematicamente quello che
CO2
abbiamo
started
visto è che
being
questo numero
registered,
sempre
what we have
aumenta.
seen was this
Possibilità
figure
di andare
go
a
up
vedere, per
and
esempio,
up
quando
and up
siete nati
again.
voi,
So you can go
ciascuno
to
di
have
voi
a
può
look
vedere a che
when you were
livello eravamo
born,
di CO2, siamo nel
what was the level
66,
of
eravamo a
CO2. I was born in
420, adesso siamo a
1966, it was
420.
320,
Non
now
si
it's
sa da quanti
420.
milioni di
We
anni
don't know
la concentrazione di CO2,
for
qual è il massimo, diciamo,
what the
da quanto
highest
tempo non
ceiling
abbiamo
is.
toccato questi livelli. Ed è forse il dato oggettivo a cui
And
possiamo
this is
ancorarci.
an
Naturalmente
objective
gli
piece of
scenici
information
negazionisti ci
that
saranno
we
sempre,
can
però insomma ormai
use. Of
pare
course, there
acclarato
will
che
always be
l'uomo stia avendo un
deniers, but
impatto
it seems
fortissimo
undeniable
sull'ambiente,
that man has
sull'ambiente, sulla
had
terra,
a very
sull'ecosistema.
strong impact
E
on the
questo sta
environment,
ponendo
on
una
our
serie di sfide a
ecosystem.
tutti
And
noi
this
nei nostri
poses a
comportamenti
number of
privati, perché vediamo
challenges for
anche gli
all of
effetti
us
di
in
quello che
our
accade ai
private
cambiamenti
lives, in our
climatici
personal
nelle regioni, nei
behaviors, everything that
disastri nelle
happens with
siccità,
the
quindi quello
climate
che cambia
change,
attorno al clima e
floodings,
il nostro
droughts,
clima e quello che
everything that
vediamo
happens
anche nei
revolving around
cambiamenti
climate,
delle
and
aziende,
also the
nei
changes
cambiamenti nei
that occur
comportamenti
in
individuali e
businesses,
collettivi
changes
e
to
di che cosa
individual
fanno le
and
aziende
collective
per reagire in
behaviors,
qualche
and what
modo a questa
businesses,
situazione. Dal
companies
2018
are
ad oggi,
doing
tra
to
l'altro, noi in
react to
pochissimi
this.
anni abbiamo
In
sperimentato di tutto dal
very
punto di
few
vista
years,
delle crisi
we have
possibili, quindi
really
non
gone through
soltanto la
everything
pandemia
in
di
terms of
Covid,
possible
ma
crises,
difficoltà e
not
carenze della
just the
supply
pandemic
chain
and COVID, but
e esplosione dei prezzi
supply
dell'energia a
chain
tante velocità nel
gaps
caso, come
and
poi la
skyrocketing
crisi
energy
porti
prices.
a dei
Just to mention a few
cambiamenti.
examples
Oggi
of
su Sole
how
24 Ore
crisis
raccontiamo
leads
la
to
storia di questa
changes.
azienda
Today on
brasiliana
Sole
che ha deciso di
24 Ore,
iniziare a
we are telling
bruciare
the
per la
story of
produttività
this
non più gas
company
ma
based
olio
in
di
Veneto,
soia, che è
which
un sottoprodotto
decided to
della
burn
stabilità.
soy
Ai
oil,
prezzi
which
del
is a
gas
byproduct,
di
instead of
circa
burning
anni fa, 4 anni
gas
fa,
or
questa
oil,
scelta non
diesel oil.
sarebbe stata
A few
economicamente
years ago, this
sostenibile
choice
dal
would
punto
have
di vista
been
finanziario. Oggi invece
unsustainable
si
from a
comincia a
financial
diventare
point of view, whereas
un'opzione
today it
valida.
is
Oggi
becoming
sono
a
decine
valid
di
alternative.
situazioni,
And
di
then we have
comportamenti, di
scores of
cambiamenti.
situations, changes
Un'azienda che ho incontrato qualche
that
giorno
have
fa, un
been put in
imprenditore
place.
che produce
I met a
valvole
few
per oil
days
and
ago
gas, che mi ha
an
detto mi sono
entrepreneur who produces
comprato
valves for oil and
un'azienda
gas,
che
and he
produce
said, I
valvole
bought a
per
company
acqua.
that produces
E gli ho
valves
chiesto
for
come mai,
water. And
cosa
I asked him,
c'entra. E
why?
lui mi ha
How
detto
come?
che
What does it
ottenere
have to do?
finanziamenti
Well,
se fai oil and
obtaining
gas è diventato un
financing if you do
problema.
oil and
Se
gas,
io
it has
comincio a
become problematic.
riconvertirmi e a
Whereas
fare
if
altro,
I start to
accedo al credito in
reconvert and
maniera
do
diversa. Ecco,
other
di tutto
things, I
questo
can have a
parleremo oggi,
different
come
type
abbiamo
of
fatto nelle
access to
scorse
credit.
edizioni.
So this
Cercheremo
is
di
something we
affrontare
will
il tema
tackle today.
della
We will try
sostenibilità, di
to
raccontare il
discuss
cambiamento
sustainability,
attraverso
to
la
tell
storia delle
change
singole
through the
aziende di
story
vari
of the
settori,
various
di varie
companies
dimensioni,
in various
italiane e non
sectors
solo,
of
e dei
different
protagonisti che
sizes,
avranno anche ruoli
Italians but not
istituzionali
only,
per intervenire
meeting the protagonists, the
temi
institutional
che
protagonists
naturalmente
as well, to hear their
rappresentanti
voices,
delle
and
imprese.
also,
Lo
of
faremo nel
course,
corso
we
della
will meet
giornata, ma partiamo
representatives of
senz'altro e la parola
businesses. So we will
ovviamente
do that
ai
throughout the
padroni
day,
di casa,
but
quindi
now the
Letizia
floor to
Moratti,
our
cofondatrice della
hosts,
Fondazione
i.e.
San
Letizia
Patrignano.
Moratti,
Prego.
co-founder of the San Patrignano Foundation. Over to you.
Prego, buongiorno.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to San Patrignano. I would like to thank in particular Confindustria for having partnered up with us in this day to study and analyze the topics of sustainability. What does it mean to speak about sustainability today? Well, I think on the one hand, we have to be aware that when speaking of sustainability, we also have to speak about social, economic, and environmental sustainability. The three sustainabilities go hand in hand. And then I think we have to act speedily. So we have to act rapidly. We have to have a project, a plan for the short term, but also with a longer, medium and long-term horizon. So I think we need to be aware of the fact that we need to act on different fronts at the same time with a multi-sectorial approach that is not a siloed way about the problem, but rather affect different sectors, because sustainability affects different sectors, and as such we need a multi-sectorial approach to tackle it. And we also have to be aware that in a globalized world, a problem affecting one country affects other countries as well. So we need to be particularly aware of our role as active players in decision-making processes, which institutions, international institutions, not just the national governments, but also the European and international institutions make on this respect. I think that to do so, it is very important to exchange experiences, highlight the best practices, and to do so with an open mind, being aware that we have to field new approaches. We have to be prepared to go outside of our comfort zones. So we have to have an open mind towards new types of approach, while we being aware that we can make the difference in our individual sectors. So individual responsibility becomes collective responsibility for the collective and common good. So today we shall hear very important speakers from the world of finance, who will tell us how finance can support the green transition in companies, how SG investments may be supported, but we shall also hear from insurers, for example. I hope we will also hear how insurers, for example, can help the welfare system that is going through a difficult situation by crisscrossing experiences from insurance companies, businesses, and to create this sense of community. And I wish that insurers will be able to support farmers who are experiencing difficulties due to the drought. We shall also hear from businesses regarding their need to strengthen their skills and knowledge in order to achieve a green transition that does not penalize our industries. We shall also hear from Confindustria, the Italian Business Confederation, who undoubtedly is going to tell us about the problems they are meeting, but also the opportunities offered by the NRRP when it comes to sustainability. And then we shall hear other speakers speak about digital sustainability. It might seem a separate topic, but indeed it isn't. Suffice it to think how important it is to connect the schools in small mountain towns or hamlets to overcome the digital divide with bigger cities. So sustainability, which can be achieved also thanks to digital technologies. And we shall also hear some best practices in the sector of energy. I'm thinking about Montella, but I'm also thinking about Eni, which is preparing an extraordinary plan with biofuels. And I must say that I'm really, really sorry to see how Europe has made decisions which go against the interests, definitely of our countries, by privileging or preferring e-fuel, i.e. a German interest. But not only that, not only not meeting our country's requirements and the requirements of agriculture in our country, but also creating criticalities in a continent continent that should be important for them and for the whole of Europe, i.e. Africa. I think, and then Eni will explain the biofuel projects they are currently implementing in Africa, but I'm thinking about the hundreds of thousands, millions, dare I say, of farmers who could benefit from these technologies for which Europe has remained unsensitive, and to which Europe has not provided a satisfactory reply. We shall hear representatives from the agri-food sector, from diversity in a sector like agriculture that is tackling a massive problem like drought. And we shall also hear from different businesses and different programs to support biodiversity. We shall also hear an experience of Bicocca, the first university who has added biodiversity as a horizontal topic across all of its university degrees. And then we will reach the conclusions, which will not be a conclusion at all. They will be just taking stock of the situation towards the path to sustainability. And I really hope that this will lead to other meeting opportunities, because some topics we won't be able to tackle during the day, but are just as important. Topics to do with the sustainability, for example, social sustainability. And I'm thinking about the population crisis. In our country, the situation is going to become dire unless we get brave and prepare a massive plan to foster natality. There won't be a sustainable pension system, to make only one example. So this is a problem within a problem. So from this multidisciplinary approach, lack of natality is a specific in and of itself. And then we have to provide answers to the too many needs in our country. Too many young people who do not work, who do not study either. So this is a problem in terms of social sustainability. Our country is going through problems because there is a lack of natality, and we need at the same time to guarantee dignified living conditions for our pensioners, for our elderly. So I really hope that this appointment of ours today may lead to other opportunities to also tackle these topics from a point of view that doesn't tackle very important topics like finance, business, agriculture and technologies, but also take a wider view to social aspects that are strictly connected. And I'm saying this to reach the reason why we are meeting here in San Patrignano today. I would like to thank Vice President of Confindustria Marenghi, Dr. Mariotti, Director General. Thank you very much to Confindustria for supporting this forum in this place, because this is where there is a balance between social and economic sustainability. San Patrignano helps young people who need some help to overcome a problematic situation, which is very possible, but at the same time it is also a social enterprise, a social business, that new model of business whose mission, whose intrinsic mission is not just economic sustainability, but also achieving social sustainability. So this place is an example of how these two different types of sustainability may go hand in hand. So I would like to thank all those who have chosen to participate here today. I would also like to thank the speakers, and then in the late afternoon we will draw some conclusions together. Thank you very much again. Thank you, Mrs. Moratti. And now moving on to businesses, because this is one of the most important things we're going to tackle today. Businesses which up until only a few years ago tackled green paths, sustainable paths out of own independent choice rather than out of an obligation, now have to come to grips with a totally different world, because ways of consumption have changed, and unless you do some things, consumers don't reward you anymore like they used to do in the past, and also partially because the EU legislation is changing the rules for many sectors. For example, packaging. Some rules are in the making that will totally turn the sector upside down, and emission-producing sectors have to adapt to new EU regulations, which, starting from cars and vehicles, are imposing a number of obligations. So there is a lot of pressure towards change. What is the problem? Well, the problem is it's all happening very, very quickly, and while other things also happen at the same time. So we are tackling the green transition while we are also tackling the digital transition. So companies are adopting new technologies, and we have a lot of SMEs. So it might be somewhat easier for bigger companies, but it's harder for smaller family-run businesses with maybe 40, 50 employees, which is the backbone of our economy. So both transitions happen at a very difficult time because we have a gas crisis, cost of energy crisis, supply chain crisis. Shipping a container to the US cost $2,000. Now it's around $10,000, and it's decreasing. So logistics has become increasingly complex, all of which in a framework of inflation where providers, suppliers ask for price increases, and you try very often unsuccessfully to pass them on downstream. So companies have to comply the new legislation issued by EU. And we will discuss this with Alberto Marenghi, whom I would like to invite on stage. He's Vice President of Confindustria, the Italian Business Confederation.
Buongiorno.
Good morning. It is a pleasure and an honor to be here today to extend the greetings on behalf of the chairman of Confindustria, Carlo Bonomi, who has asked me to replace him today. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Letizia Moratti. The chairman, Mr. Bonomi, asked me to thank her on his behalf and on behalf of Confindustria for her constant commitment in guiding the San Patrignano Foundation and in chairing this foundation. Thank you, Letizia Moratti. I would also like to take this opportunity to thank our institutional partner, Intesa San Paolo, and also the top partners of this event, Eni, Il Sole 24 Ore, GPDeco, Asiambiente Italia, Celli Group, Itacen, Montello, and Mooney. And I hope I've not forgotten any of these members. Last year, I was here with Carlo Pesenti. I want to be perfectly clear. I still remember how that day was emotional. San Patrignano is really a unique place. And so I'd like to also thank the guests of this community. We are experiencing a moment of great transformations. There are big challenges and problems to be dealt with: sustainable finance, energy, digital transformation, innovation, agri-food, biodiversity. All that we do on these topics might be fragile if it is not supported by an ethical approach based on awareness and focused on human beings and on the impact that each and every one of us can have on the environment in which we live and on the people who surround us. These are concepts that we are very well aware of, but, you know, being here today allows us to make a broader reflection about environmental sustainability and corporate social responsibility. The Sustainable Economy Forum is something that Confindustria has been proud of for 5 years. We have been taking part in the organization of this meeting together with San Patrignano, and it is really a unique event. We're going through a very difficult moment. The Italian companies, the Italian businesses have been able to manage And my proxy, the proxy I have in Confindustria, my role in Confindustria, allows me to consider the effects of these changes, which have also had an impact on our Confindustria Association over the past few years. Confindustria has been growing over the past few years, even during the period of the pandemic. It has been a period in which enterprises and business owners have felt the need not to be alone. At a moment in which there was plenty of uncertainty, we tried to move beyond our traditional pathways, and we have tried to embrace a broader and more inclusive vision of our companies. We have tried to talk to the Italian businesses, the ones that are members of Confindustria, but also the other ones, talking to them about the best way to face the difficulty and to interpret their scenario. Now, I'm not just simply saying this to praise Confindustria, but just simply to give you an example. And the example is that at a moment of great difficulty, we were saved not thanks to our vision of the businesses, but rather we have been saved and we have succeeded because we have joined forces for ourselves and for the countries. Different businesses have joined forces in order to meet the health pandemic emergency. And they promoted vaccines, they've signed protocols with the trade unions in order to work in safety. The priority was to support Italy in one of the most difficult periods ever. And the responsibility that we felt at that time had a broad effect on everything. It was a growth multiplier. I'm saying this in order to remind you that corporate social responsibility is not just a name, and it can be such only if there are actions at its basis. Corporate social responsibility can lead to good results. It starts virtuous circles. It has an impact on decision-making process, on business processes, human relations. It is an approach that must be considered, especially at this moment of uncertainty that still characterizes this moment. The Confindustria Study Center recently published an economic forecast, and it highlighted that 2023 will be a year of transition. And unfortunately, growth in 2023 will be quite limited. We had a worry. We were concerned about the increase in interest rates approved by the European Central Bank, but we're going to work together in order to improve our forecasts for 2024. However, in this framework, and I'm saying this and I'm proud of that, the businesses in Italy have been able to hold forward, and we want to keep looking at environmental sustainability as a very important element, having a broader vision focused on the long term. This has been mentioned by Mr. Bonomi a short while ago. Europe needs to define an organic and long-term industrial policy focusing on environmental sustainability objectives as well as social impact that this revolution might have. Targeted investments, technological innovation, research can give us all the necessary solutions to promote sustainable development in the future. I have to say that some of the choices made at the European level, especially when it comes to the reduction of global emissions, will probably badly affect some sectors with consequences also on employment. Europe as a whole only generates 8% of global emissions. Too strict policies run the risk of penalizing us compared to other global countries, world countries, without actually solving the problem. The transition has to be implemented, but this has to be done focusing on technological innovation. And this is the precondition for a broad-scale action. I think it is also important to stress that only businesses can implement the technological solutions to achieve the sustainability objectives and targets. Businesses are not the problem. Businesses are the solution. A few weeks ago, we published study about the consequences on Fit for 55, the transition program launched by Europe with an ideological approach, which is probably a little bit myopic. For Italy, more than 1,000 billion euros of investments will be necessary if we want to achieve the objectives we have set for ourselves. It is an unprecedented amount of money. We are scared, I have to say, but it is also a big opportunity. We must be able to allocate resources where they are needed and where they can generate wealth without exaggerating on this. This country cannot afford the luxury to distributing incentives to the whole of the country without a precise policy. In order to do that, we have to be brave and we have to be balanced. We have the moral obligation to try and pass on to the future generations, to our children, to our nephews, a more sustainable planet without causing any problem to the social texture. So the challenge is to preserve the industrial policy targets, employment targets, reconciling them with the sustainability targets without focusing on unrealistic objectives. The vision of this integrated policy and sustainability, in our opinion, must start from a clear mapping of our current positioning of our manufacturing sector when it comes to technology. This will be the point of strength to govern changes. It is a very important topic, and we have to focus on this topic involving all the elements of the industrial sectors. Mr. Bonomi reminded us that there is something new that is going to happen very soon. We have what we call Industry 5.0, the evolution of the model based on 4.0, in which evolution plays an essential role, and human beings can play a role trying to shape the political strategic choices for the future. We are witnessing this when it comes to the discussions about artificial intelligence. It is impossible to stop change. We are very well aware of that. And we must be able to govern change. Today, I'm convinced sustainability can be reached if we are able to preserve our human approach so that it can be the added value. I don't want to go beyond the time allotted to me, and so I'll come to my conclusion with a simple reflection. I'd like to remind you all that our businesses are ready to take up these challenges. The dozens of companies I've visited over the past few months in the north and in the south, the small and large companies, multinational companies, etc., have a very clear idea about the importance of joining forces, looking for high-level targets despite the difficulty and despite the emergency situation. Each company has adopted a sustainable approach by activating different strategies in order to generate a positive impact on people and on the environment. It is now up to us to create a new framework. And the challenge will be especially for our youth. It will be our youth that will have to do even better than those who came before them. I think we can still do something. We can point the right way, passing on to them the values of our manufacturing companies and the beauty of our products. We can and we must pass on to our children the feeling of being proud of being the 7th country in the world and the 2nd country in Europe. Thank you very much, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you, Mr. Marenghi, Vice President of Confindustria, reminding us of the difficult predicament of stunted growth we are living through, as confirmed by statistical data published only shortly ago about industrial production in February, with a drop of 0.2% compared to the previous month, 2.3% compared to last year, so the second consecutive drop, with higher energy consuming sectors being in a more difficult situation. So the cost was 300 euro per megawatt hour. It's now some 40 euro, but that's still twice what we were used to prior to COVID. So energy no longer is a commodity.